talk clearer and slow and loud. My name is Larry Levy. I was born in Toronto, Canada in 1924. And when I was 17, I joined the Army in Canada. I went to a place called Manning Depot, which was the Exhibition Park. Everybody knows where Exhibition Park is. They were training us there. At that particular time, I joined the Army with another fella, and he followed wherever I went in the Army. And at that time, I was just a young boy, just like most of you are here, and some of the young fellas here today. I'm going to tell you, when I joined the Army, I'm going to tell you some of the places I was during the war. I joined and I went to, from Canada, I trained as a signaller, an artillery signaller. That's what the signal is here. That was artillery, our guns that fire against the enemy positions. Now, what I did at that particular time, we took a troop ship into England, to Liverpool. From Liverpool, they took me to my new regiment called the 2nd Survey Regiment. The job I had at 2nd Survey Regiment was as a signaller. I used to pick up German gun positions by means of sound. Now, how did we do that? We used to pick up the sound that used to go into a headquarters set, and we used to find out and locate German positions, and we used to fire back at the enemy. At that time, we went into a place, we landed in France July 6, 1944. I was just a young fellow, and I climbed down the ships just like everybody else, and I was having a tough time because I was a small guy. But I did everything I had to do, and I did everything that I'm supposed to do. We landed at Beny-sur-Mer, France, in Normandy. Normandy was a place where the Canadians landed in June 6, 1944. At that particular time, they captured quite a number of places, but they didn't capture Caen, which was a major turn that they had to capture in order to get to the planes and get the tanks in the position to move on. At that time, I moved from Beny-sur-Mer in 1944. I went into a town called Caen, just outside of Caen. We didn't capture Caen at that time. My job was, we had the first two positions we went to, we went in, we didn't capture Caen, but we came into a position that we had to dig our positions, we had to dig trenches right away, because the shells were coming down, and my first time I had been bombed all the time, and I was scared. I was concerned because people get killed. So what happens during the first couple of weeks during our position there? My driver gets killed. My artillery signaller beside me gets wounded terribly, and the sergeant gets wounded. And I was very lucky to survive. At that time, we stayed in that position for approximately 12-15 days. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
All hear me? Now, what I did at that particular time, we stayed in a position, one of the new signalers came up, and he walked into no man's land. Beside us were the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, dug in, and I didn't know I was at the front line position until I woke up to the fact that we're being attacked every day by enemy guns and by warplanes. Our warplanes were bombing us steady, and it was a tough go there. There was my first battle that I was in, and I had to survive, which I did. The next time we moved across, we captured Caen, finally, in Carpiquet Airport. At that particular time, we moved on, crossed the Orne River, which was a big river to cross, because we couldn't get into the section where the southern part towards Falaise Gap. If somebody knows the map of France, Falaise is about another 15 miles south of Caen. But the Germans were tough. At that particular time, the SS were tough guys, the 12th SS, and I happened to be opposite their position. And I didn't realize they captured 124 Canadians, and they shot them all. And they were tough people. They didn't take no prisoners at that particular time. Now, I can slow down if I'm talking too fast. Now, the fact of the matter is, we did move on from our position, and we moved on towards Tilly-Lac-Compan. Before that, I got into a position called Cormelis. Cormelis was just south of Caen. At that particular time, we were dug in a forest area. The five of us, is a five-man crew, and our job was to pick up enemy gun positions through sound. Anyway, we finally got there, all 30 Polish tanks pulled up beside us. And I said, I better dig in here because this looks like there'll be a battle here. Before you turned around, the Germans opened up with their 88 and destroyed every tank. At that particular time, I went with my five-man crew. I was included in that. We tried to save these guys because they were young guys like me. I was 17, 18 at that particular time. And we moved on. Nobody survived. They all burnt out. When a tank gets hit, the shells go around it and destroys everything in that tank. And none of them survived. 30 tanks. It was a terrible ordeal for me. And it was something that I couldn't really understand what was happening. Our next position was Tilly-Lac-Compan. We went through, and there was a big battle in Tilly-Compan. And at that particular time, we broke through to Verriers Ridge. And I happened to be one of the guys on Verriers Ridge, and the Allies were building up quite a group of thousands of soldiers, including American, British, Canadian, and Polish troops. At that time, we were bombed by our own planes. The Americans came over 1,000 planes, and I looked up and I seen the bombs coming down. They killed about 150 of our soldiers, not just from my regiment, from all over the regiment. But we had to move on. It's one of these mistakes, they call it friendly fire today. The fact of the matter is that we finally had to get ready for the push, and the Germans were very strong with their tank positions and whatnot. And Hitler's SS were very, very difficult to get along with. We moved on. We crossed past Verriers Ridge. We broke through, and then we came upon Haudesmal. Haudesmal was a small town with caverns in it. Again, the British bombed us. 1,000 planes came over at that time, and they also killed another 23 of our members. And I was concerned. I was concerned because people were getting killed all the time. Anyway, we moved on towards the Falaise Gap. In the Falaise Gap was a turning point. The Germans were in a position that we could surround the German 7th Army. The Americans were coming up from Argenton, and the Canadians were coming through Falaise Gap. We surrounded them, we captured thousands and thousands of German troops. But eventually we broke them down. Then we moved on towards the Seine River, arrived in that town. The people lined up for us. They gave us flowers and calvados and whatever in order that they were happy to see us. At that particular time, we went through the town square. As we drove through, we seen that they were cutting the hairs off at the collaborators. The collaborators were the ones that collaborated with the German soldiers. And they made it was an unbelievable sight. We went on to the next site. We went on to the coast areas of Calais, Boulogne, and Antwerp. Not Antwerp, but anyway, the fact of the matter is that we stayed at Calais for a while. We picked up some enemy gun positions there, and we moved on. They didn't capture Calais until they had to bomb it continuously. They moved on to Boulogne. Boulogne was another town not far from Calais. We eventually got into Belgium. In Belgium, we came across into Ghent. Ghent was a nice, quiet town, and we had a nice, beautiful time there because we went the first time. I had a shower, and shaved, got cleaned up. We never had that because you didn't have the facilities to be able to give you all that stuff. So we were always, they give us new underwear, new clothes, at least to look after ourselves. We then moved on towards the Breskens Canal, past Antwerp. Antwerp was locked in by the islands, and they couldn't bring any boats in. So we turned around, we tried to capture the islands. They cost us quite a number of troops there. 5,000 were killed there by the Canadians. We eventually moved on. Towards Holland. And I spent quite a bit of time in Holland. Holland was a country, if you dug a hole, water came up because there's a lot of dikes there. And eventually we had to build up in order to protect ourselves, which we did. We eventually got into Nijmegen, Holland. Nijmegen, Holland, I came across an American paratrooper from the 101st Airborne Division. At that particular time, he happened to catch me. The fellow was about 6'5" and I'm 5'2". He would grab me and was so happy to see me. He said, "You Canadians moved into the position." I said, "Hold on, I don't know where I am right now, but I know this, they just had a battle for Arnhem." He was one of the soldiers that tried to get Arnhem, and they failed to get Arnhem, Holland. Eventually, we stayed in Nijmegen for approximately 2 months, over the winter months. At that time, I stayed in a school, similar to this school here, and I just slept in the basement. And eventually the German guns were coming up, because we're in the salient, and the guns were always coming over and bombing us. And eventually, the bombs hit our position, and they hit our house, the schoolhouse. And I didn't know it, but they dug me out. I was in that schoolhouse, and the schoolhouse was destroyed. I'm lucky to come out alive at that particular time. Anyway, well, I'll move on to the next position. We went in and we crossed the Rhine at Kleve, Germany, and we moved on towards Oldenburg. Oldenburg, we got another shower and a shave and got cleaned up. And eventually, this is May of 1945. In 1945, the Germans were losing quite a number of troops, and eventually we were overcoming them. We had thousands and thousands of Allied troops. We came into a position that we came up to from Oldenburg, we moved on to Emden. Emden, the war stopped then. The Germans were bringing all their rifles and piling them up, and I was one of them that was taken from their position, and they gave up. They finally surrendered, and I eventually went back to The Hague. From The Hague, I went to a town called Zeist. Zeist, our regiment at that time, was breaking up because the war was over. They surrendered. The Germans surrendered completely. At that particular time, I joined the Far East Force to fight in Japan. Japan, where they were still fighting. What I did, I don't know the reason. My friends were all doing it, and I guess I did the same thing. So the fact of the matter is, the war was over. I joined the Far East Force. I went back to England, and at that particular time, I went back to Canada. I arrived on the Mauritania, and I went back on the St. Louis, a small ship. Anyway, I finally got back home. The Americans dropped an atomic bomb in July and August of 1945, and the war was over in Japan, and I didn't have to go to Japan. I was prepared to go there as one of the new units that they were forming to put us there. So that's really, in essence, of my story. It's short. I didn't make a long story out of it. I had a lot of incidents that happened to me. During the war, what happened, I had blood poisoning in my left arm from barbed wire cuts. And I got blood poisoning, and I was in an ambulance. And they're taking me back to a hospital in Bruges, Belgium. In Belgium, I stayed in a hospital for about a month. So, but I came over it, and I went back to my regiment, which I was thrilled to get back to. That's really an essence of my story. Now, if anybody wants to ask any questions or anything, I'll be happy to answer.
Larry.
I don't hear too, so try to speak up.
When you're in action, what did you do most? Looking for gun positions or handling the artillery?
Can you come here? I'm sorry. I got 2 hearing aids in. Yes.
When you're in action, what did you do most? Looking for gunners positions on the opposing side?
Yeah, my job, I stayed in a hole, in a trench, and I used to, for 12 hours. And when the German guns fired, I picked up their sound by my radio. There's 5 positions across the whole front, similar to me, 5-man crew. At that particular time, we located by means of sound. Now, when you have a Hart gun, it's similar to having a Hart a zigzag up and down. That's the same similar sound that you get when you pick up the German guns. And then as soon as we found out, we sent the information back and to our guns. And our guns try to fire and locate their guns and knock them out.
Okay, so you're mostly in a ditch.
I stayed in a hole, yeah.
Okay.
And you couldn't stay on top. If you stayed on top, the shells were coming down all the time.
Anything else? Yes.
I don't hear. Do you want to come up? Thank you, dear.
Have you ever stabbed anyone with a knife?
With this thing?
Oh, that.
This is a German.
That's a German band. And during the war, we captured a lot of Germans. And I picked up a gun. I had a pistol with me, and a 38 millimeter. And I had this, and I came back to Canada. I lost the gun. Somebody stole it on me. But I brought back some little goodies. Any others? Come on up here.
Do you still have any injuries from the war, like arm poisoning?
No, I overcame the blood poisoning, but I did fall into a ditch and my nose went that way. They gave me an operation, they put a bone in from my hip into my nose. So I really got a broken nose too, which I didn't mention. Which I didn't mention during the time.
Okay.
Larry.
Anywhere else? Okay, this little fella here. Both of you can come up at one time. You can come up too.
Did you ever go in jail?
No, I never went to jail. Jail, is that what you said?
Yes.
No.
When was your first battle? Your first battle, when was it?
The first battle I had was we were attacked before that, but my first battle was in Caen, France. It was an unbelievable battle. That's where my driver got killed, and my other signaller got wounded, and the sergeant got wounded. Any other questions?
How old were you when you retired?
I'm sorry?
How old were you when you retired?
How old were you when you retired? You just retired.
Oh, retired. I'm 87 years old now. I'm 87 now. I retired. I went into real estate and building when I came back. I went into the taxi business too. So I did a lot of things before. You come on up here.
What was your worst injury?
Your worst injury? You didn't have a bad injury.
What's that?
Your worst injury?
Well, my nose, because I had 3 operations on it.
Larry, you didn't tell them about the mustard gas.
Oh, mustard gas. Here's what I did. And when I was in Canada in 1943, they asked for volunteers to go to Ottawa. Now, they're going to test me as a guinea pig for mustard gas. Now, this is what I got from the government. The government sent this to me. When I went to Ottawa for 3 weeks, they tested me in a gas mask. They put mustard gas on my arm, and eventually I was a guinea pig for the testing of mustard gas. But I spent 3 weeks there. I came back and I was sent overseas to fight in France. So it didn't have any effect on me, but the government gave us money for it. And I didn't realize at that time.
Because they weren't supposed to use you as guinea pigs.
That's right, we're guinea pigs, that's right.
And they weren't supposed
Any others? There's a lot of things I didn't bring up. Come on up to you fellas.
Since the war, have you met any German soldiers, and how was that, facing them as people, not as soldiers?
I came in contact with German soldiers during the war, but I did not come in contact after the war. So I didn't have any contact at all.
And since you were tested with mustard gas, did the Germans ever use chemicals against?
No, we were very fortunate that they didn't use mustard gas or any other kind of gas that could really hurt us.
Okay.
Would you be able to describe your uniform and the medals that you received? Your uniform and the medals that you received.
Yes.
Larry.
What about it?
Would you be able to tell us?
Okay, to go through it all, I spent some time there. I was in England during the time they were bombing England, and I spent some. So they give you a medal for that. I got a medal for Normandy. In Normandy, I got a medal that I landed in Normandy in 1944. Then I got a medal for the France-Germany Star that I fought in France and Germany during that time. Then there's another couple of medals that are related to what I was doing during that time. So these are medals that are built up. And I went to Holland with my wife in 2000. The Dutch people asked us to come back to their homes. The Dutch people were so happy to see Canadians that they were thrilled. They gave us their bed, they gave us everything just to look after us. For 12 days, Betty and I spent time in Holland. And they looked after, and they gave us their bedroom, they gave us everything else. Unbelievable what they did to us. They were so great. They gave us a medal when I was ready to come home. That's a Dutch medal, right here. Any other questions? You come on up, the two of you. It's both of you. Sorry I don't hear too well. Go ahead.
What was your true opinion of Adolf Hitler?
I'm sorry?
What was your true opinion of Adolf Hitler?
Well, Adolf Hitler and his guys were killing people left and right, and the people I was up against was the 12th SS. They didn't take no prisoners, so if the guy got captured, tough enough to be whatever I was, they'd kill you anyway. So I was concerned. I was afraid. I was an 18 or 19-year-old kid by the time I landed in France. What's your question?
Did you ever have to change your uniform?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever have to change your uniform?
Did you ever have to change your uniform?
Oh, yes, several times, yes, that's a good question. Any other questions?
When was how did you feel when you first killed someone?
How did I feel when
you killed the person your enemy?
Well, I had a machine gun, and my machine gun was in case if I was attacked by enemy troops. Now, the only way I was killing people is by the guns firing back. I didn't actually kill any soldiers direct. I was an easygoing guy. I didn't want to kill anybody. It was a tough thing to do. It's not easy to kill people. But in order to self-sacrifice yourself, you have to stay alive. It's a good question. Okay, I think that's about it. I think we've answered all the questions. I want to thank everybody here for inviting me and Betty and I for coming up here.
Opportunity to thank you, Mr. Levy and Betty, for sharing this experience with us. I think it's provided us with a different perspective on history and something that we all learn and we're engaged with. So thank you for fighting and for doing so much for our country.
It's my pleasure. Anytime you want me back,
appreciate this.
You just call me and I'll be happy to come back.
Absolutely.
I was supposed to bring another couple of boys with me, but they couldn't make it.
Wow, it's amazing.
When you're a kid, what do you know about the war? None of us understood what we're going
Absolutely.
into. We didn't believe what was going to happen. Before you turn around, there's graves of many soldiers there.
And it's because of people like you, we're so privileged to live in this
Well,
country.
my timing was, at that time, I was 7, and the reason I really joined, during the war in Dieppe, there was a battle at Dieppe. At that particular time, in Dieppe, a lot of Canadian boys attacked Dieppe, and 1,000 of them were killed. Most of them I knew. So I figured, geez, if they went over, I might as well take that opportunity and fight for our country.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what I did.
Well, we're very lucky to have people like
Thank you, and I
very
appreciate you inviting us. And the shell killed him in front of the other. And that's me there.
That's